Do you have a secret folder or Pinterest pins of someday screenshots, travel, creative projects, or a calmer life, and then crash into bed wondering if you'll ever have the energy to actually live any of it? If your future self feels inspiring one minute and completely out of reach the next, your nervous system might be begging you for a different way to imagine what comes next. Welcome to Rooted Insights, a podcast for women in their second season of life who spent years caring for everyone else, kids, partners, work, households, holding it all together while quietly putting your own needs on the back burner. If you now find yourself wondering, what's next for me? What do I really want for my life now? And how do I start prioritizing myself without dropping everything else? You're in the right place. I'm Dr. Kelley, a health and well-being specialist and mind-body expert, and here we blend grounded, science-informed practices into everyday life so we can better support our hardworking nervous systems, emotional health, and authentic selves, especially in this powerful mid-season of life. In this first season of Rooted Insights, we've talked about your nervous system, emotions, repressed feelings, intuition, intention, imagination, neuroplasticity, loss, transitions, friendships, hormones, and creativity. In this episode, we'll explore how to imagine a future that actually fits your body and your life, and how to let that vision gently guide the small choices you make now, and how to partner with your nervous system so your next season grows from truth, not from pressure. So take a slow inhale and a slightly longer exhale. You might keep quietly in mind a version of you 5 or 10 years from now, or even 5 months from now. Not what she owns or posts, but how she feels in her own skin. Let's start with the familiar someday pattern. You might have a mental or digital folder full of screenshots and pins, homes you'd love to live in, places you want to visit, midlife reinvention stories, creative projects, or images of a calmer, more spacious life. Maybe you've listened to the podcast, read the books, even taken a course or two on creating your best life. In quiet moments, you daydream that someday when the kids are fully on their own, out of the house, I'll travel more. Or someday when work slows down, I'll write that book, take that course, or start that business. Or someday when I have more energy, I'll finally start that fitness routine and take better care of my body. But most days, your nervous system is managing a lot. Work demands, family needs, aging parents, and hormonal shifts. You scroll at night, telling yourself you're researching or getting inspired. But secretly, you feel heavier, frustrated you haven't started any of it yet, scared it might be too late, overwhelmed by the gap between your current life and the images on your screen. Over time, the idea of a future you can start to feel more like a criticism than a companion. Some more disciplined, more confident, more rested version of you that you're supposed to become, but can't quite catch up with. If this resonates, take another breath. Today we'll explore a different way to relate to your future self, not as pressure to transform overnight, but as a kind, informed ally who can help you make nervous system-wise sustainable 5% shifts from where you are now. So first, let's ground this in a bit of science. Your brain is constantly predicting things like what will happen next, how much energy you'll need, and whether something is safe or threatening. These predictions are based on your past experiences, your current state, and the images and stories you feed it about the future. A few simple points to keep in mind is that when you visualize the future in a way that feels realistic and emotionally believable, your brain and nervous system begin to treat those scenarios as possible, and your behavior can shift in small, aligned ways. This is part of how neuroplasticity works. Repeated mental rehearsal can strengthen certain pathways. But when your future self is imagined as a perfect, fixed, far-off, unrealistic version of you, your brain may actually register that as a threat or impossibility. The gap feels too big, and your nervous system moves into overwhelm or shutdown instead of motivation. And when your nervous system is already carrying a lot, chronic stress, grief, and hormonal shifts, it has less capacity for big, abrupt changes. It tends to respond better to small, consistent shifts that feel safe enough to allow. So if future you has mostly existed as a Pinterest board of someone else's life, your system may be quietly saying, that's not us. That's not how we live. That's just too much. What we're after instead is a future self from the inside out. How do you want to feel in an ordinary day? What pace, boundaries, relationships, creative outlets, and health management support that feeling? What's the smallest, kindest next step that a woman like that might take today, given your actual circumstances? This is less about reinventing yourself and more about rewiring your life toward more alignment, with your nervous system as a co-collaborator rather than an obstacle to overcome. If you're able, you might revisit this episode later and listen to this part again, doing it with your eyes closed. But you can also just listen and imagine along as you go about your day. So we're going to imagine one day in your future. Not a perfect day, not a vacation, an ordinary weekday that feels regulated, honest, and aligned for you. Maybe it's 5 years from now or 5 months. It doesn't matter. You're just using your imagination right now. So take a slow breath in and a longer breath out. Repeat this way of breathing a few more times until you feel fully relaxed and settled into the space you're in. Now imagine waking up as your future self. Where are you waking up? Don't worry about the exact house. Instead, notice the feeling of the space. Does it feel calm, cozy, bright, spacious, or simple? And what's the first thing you notice in your body as you wake? Maybe you feel rested enough, energized, happy, or calm. Maybe you feel gently aware of your body instead of braced for the day. Then picture how you start your morning. What's the first thing you do? How quickly do you reach for your phone? Is there a small ritual, water, breathing, stretching, stepping outside, a quiet moment, that helps your nervous system start in a more grounded way? Then walk through the day in broad strokes. How does this future you move through the day, whether it's work or a meaningful activity? Is there more pacing, more breaks, more kindness and gentleness, more fun, or alignment with your values and what's meaningful for you? How does she relate to her relationships, her kids, partner, family, friends, colleagues? What's different about her boundaries, her honesty and her capacity, her well-being, and her emotions? Where does creativity show up? Music, movement, cooking, writing, gardening, crafting, or just daydreaming? And how does she wind down in the evening? What's her nightly routine? A healthy dinner, quiet time to herself, or a funny show on TV? What helps her nervous system feel safe enough to rest? Now take a closer look at this version of you. Notice how she talks to herself throughout the day, when she makes mistakes, when she's tired, when something doesn't go as planned. Could you imagine this future you practicing more self-compassion, more flexibility, more lightheartedness or silliness, or more nervous system awareness than you might offer yourself today? Then take another breath. Let this version of you be imperfect. She still has hard days, but overall, her life fits her body, her values, and her nervous system better than it does right now, even if it's only by a little bit. So now let's build a tiny bridge between that imagined day and today. On a page or in your mind, just jot down a few short phrases from what you just pictured. List for yourself more of something you desire in the mornings. Maybe it's more quiet, movement, light, water. And what's something less you'd like during the day? Overcommitting, people-pleasing, stress, or maybe deadlines. And then share one way that she cares for her brain and body. Maybe it's through short walks, therapy, saying no faster and without guilt, gentle movement, pause moments, or more honest conversations. Then ask yourself this question. What's one 5% shift I can make this week that my future self would recognize as a move in her direction? Here's some examples. If future you has more regulated mornings, your 5% shift might be going to bed 10 to 15 minutes earlier, so you're not starting the day already depleted. Maybe it's taking 3 slow breaths before looking at your phone. Or maybe it's a morning well-being routine, starting with first drinking a glass of water, some gentle movement, and a quiet moment to envision the day or just meditate without thinking. If your future you has clear boundaries, your 5% shift might be saying, let me check my capacity and get back to you, instead of saying yes immediately. Or maybe you say, thank you for thinking of me. I won't be able to do that this week. And if your future you has regular creative time, your 5% shift might be one 10-minute no-outcome creative playdate this week, or doodling or journaling first thing in the morning or before bed to release the day. The key is that the shift should feel small enough that your nervous system doesn't rebel, but meaningful enough that your future self would say, "Ah, yes, I remember when we started doing that. That made such a difference in getting us here now." You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You're simply training your brain and body to experience tiny pieces of that future state now, so it becomes more and more familiar as you work on creating those new neural pathways. As we close, you might carry these questions with you into your week. If my future self could sit beside me today, what would she thank me for starting now, even in a tiny way? And how can I let my nervous system have a vote in what I say yes and no to, so the life I'm building is actually livable from the inside? And then what's one specific 5% shift I'm willing to experiment with this week that honors both my current capacity and my future self? Remember, your future self is not here to shame you. She is you, with more practice, more data, and more lived experience. She knows you can't jump from today's reality to her life in one leap, but she also knows that small, nervous system-aware shifts, repeated over time, are extremely powerful. If this conversation helped you feel a bit more hopeful about your next season or offered a gentler way to think about your future, I'd love for you to keep walking with me here on Rooted Insights. Follow, like, or subscribe to the podcast, and if it feels supportive, share it with another mid-season woman who may find these grounded, science-informed, and heart-centered conversations helpful. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What's one thing your future self might thank you for starting or stopping this week? And what's one way you can check in with your nervous system before you say yes or no so that your choices honor both of you, who you are now and who you are becoming? Your experiment might be exactly what another woman needs to realize, that it's not too late and she's not too much, and her body and brain are still listening. Remember, you're not behind. You're in a new season of your life, and your nervous system, your heart, and your future self are all on the same team. You're allowed to build a life that feels good from the inside out. One breath, one boundary, one 5% shift at a time. We're here rooting in together, one future self, one honest today, one tiny bridge between them at a time. Until next time for our final episode of this first season on Rooted Insights.